From Stourbridge, a small town in Midlands in the UK, came two distinctive British bands. Their shared beginnings were in From Eden, where Miles Hunt played drums alongside musicians who would later form Pop Will Eat Itself. Miles then stepped out from behind the kit to become the voice and principal songwriter of the Wonder Stuff, bringing sharp observation, wit, and humour to those songs. Now, our first interview was my first ever for MTV, and it was an unmitigated disaster. So, 40 years later, has anything really changed? Miles Hunt, welcome. I go straight in with my interviews, so I just want to know, what kind of child were you? Were you someone who naturally fitted in, or were you someone who was always on the outside?
Always on the outside, I'm afraid. I was a painfully shy child, usually hiding behind my mum's skirts, which I thought about. I've lived with anxiety all my life, and I don't know whether you're aware of this, Steve, but I don't have a particularly good reputation of how I dealt with those early years of me having fame, such as it was. And I can now, in fact, I didn't even get on with the members of the other members of the band. And I can now identify it all as being connected to being a shy kid, that it was basically anxiety, which just brings us just one question I have to ask myself. Why did I choose this job? You know,
my job I can tell you why, because the whole point is, if you're shy and you have to get over that shyness by doing something, it gives you like a hit. It gives you something. And I think that, I mean, I was shy. I think that is really it. I read this book from this psychologist about how many famous people are shy and how that actually is, in a sense, a benefit, because they always want to come back for more to get that again.
Right. Well, yeah, I'd like to have had that explained to me when I was about 21, 22, and maybe I'd have been in a better mood with all of those around me than I was, because, you know, the job I went for was basically saying, everybody look and listen, look at me and listen to me, which is the absolute opposite of what my natural state wanted.
Yeah, I must say, actually, what my first ever interview was with the Wonder Stuff, and it was probably the worst interview I'd ever done in my life. And you were in your right to be a bit of a shit at that point. I mean, no, it's true. I actually wrote an autobiography and I had that in it, this story, because it was the worst interview I'd ever done. Totally unprepared. And you really, you really went for me.
Was it the one, was it at Camden Lock and we were sitting on top of... Well, okay, so I don't remember that was you, but I've seen, not the whole interview, but I've seen footage recently that is us being mic'd up and us chatting with each other, and eventually you can start to hear. I mean, it's crystal clear footage. It's amazing. And you see my memory of that period, well, not that period, but my memory of my relationship, particularly with Rob the Bass Thing Jones, our bass player, was Rob and I only ever spoke to each other shouting at each other, disagreeing, shouting in sort of comedy Vivian from the Young Ones type voices. But I never, because he died in 93, and over all the years since he's gone, I've always maintained this idea that meaning actually never got on. And then I saw that footage this year, and him and I are sitting next to each other and we are laughing, and you can clearly see there's two friends. And it was made me cry, really, because it was like, God, we were friends once. We were friends once.
Well, I'm glad I was some use in your life.
But I don't know whether you'd be more offended to say, I don't remember that it was you. I certainly don't remember that the interview was bad.
I shouldn't have said anything. It would have been fine. Anyhow, I want to talk about the atmosphere in your family and what sort of humour was in the family. What type of humour?
I suppose we were quite a jovial bunch. I don't know, or You know, my dad had a job in the unions. He was quite high powered in the unions, and so there was an atmosphere in our house. It was like, don't piss your dad off. Not that he ever got handsy with us, not that he really ever even raised his voice at us. But my dad had a completely different approach. That if you'd pissed him off, he would just give you a look that let you know. And because his job was 24 hours, 7 days a week, because it was the Thatcher years, and he was very much, that was his enemy. So when he wasn't at his office, he would come home and his nose would be in either books, political books, the weekends, when most dads might have been kicking back and reading newspapers just for relaxation, he was arming himself for the next 5 days of war against Thatcher. And so we had to be a little bit careful around the old man, who I'm really happy to say retired in his early 60s. He's 86 this year, and we're the best of mates. He was completely supportive of mine and my brother's obsession with pop and rock. Mom was, Mom was always funny, but she had a full-time job as well as sort of running the family. My dad still couldn't, boil a pan of peas without burning them. So Mom was completely in charge of feeding all of us. And so they had a lot on their plates. And you had two teenagers that punk rock and new wave had happened. And at that point, at the purchase, I think my brother's first, because he's 3 years older than me, I think it was God Save the Queen by the Pistols. At the moment that record entered our house, we lost all interest in academia, either or trying to please our parents. So I think it might have been quite tense. Plus, we were lucky enough to have separate bedrooms, Russ and I. So he had a stereo, I had a stereo. And my poor mom and dad just, either had Peaches by the Stranglers coming out of one room, Shot by Both Sides by Magazine coming out the other room. So in terms of humour, it might have been a bit light on humour as I'm just recalling all these things.
But he sort of, it wasn't really a practical joke, but he sort of played a joke by bringing home a record and announcing he's going to play you Beethoven.
Yes, he did. Yeah, so that was, hold on, sorry, it was a sheep. It was, he did, that was in the house before. We lived in Derbyshire, so 71, 72, I'm 5, and gather around the stereo, lads. He came home from work, that's correct, and he got out a 7-inch. We should have known, but I was only 5, what could I have known? It was a 7-inch with a Polydor label on, but he goes, I've bought you a Beethoven symphony to listen to. I'm like, oh, Dad. And when he put it on, dropped the stylus onto the record, it went, baby, baby, baby. And it was that Come On, Feel the Noise? I think so. And yeah, so it is his fault. You're right. Thanks.
You talked about being, your brother and you being in your own separate bedrooms and, playing your music as loud as possible. Was music the first place that you had that feeling of belonging?
I guess, but that came from the fact that our Uncle Bill, he'd been in, well, by the time I'm sort of 5, 6, Uncle Bill seems to be on Top of the Pops every week. He was in Roy Wood's Wizard, but before that, he'd been in the early lineup of Electric Light Orchestra. But what it meant to us was, so if I'm just, if I'm in infant school going into junior school, for birthdays and Christmas, you would get merch. Wizard merch that was, of course, my uncle had come by for free. So I had, we're off to see the Wizard, badges, T-shirts and stuff. So yeah, that was a nice feeling. And I've started to think this recently, of course, at the time, you just thought everyone had a relative that was on Top of the Pops every now and again, but it just felt normal to us, completely normal, And also at the same time, one of the biggest bands in the country is Slade, and they spoke like us. They've got, we've got similar accents. There's Black Country was slightly stronger than our accents, but yeah, it just seemed like, okay, this is the center of the world, and but I think I do remember playing that copy of God Save the Queen that my brother got, and he was out. I borrowed it, put it on my stereo, and it pinned me to the wall. So I was like 11 or 12, and And it was Lydon's voice. It was the Johnny Rotten voice. Was just like, that's terrifying, and I generally was, running cold with fear from that. It was demonic, and then when it finished, I was like so relieved that it finished, and I'm like, let's do that again. Because like the way you might want to go on your first roller coaster and you want to do it again immediately. And so it was a bit of a love-hate. It was terrifying. My first sort of proper experience on my own to rock and roll, if we can call the Pistols that, was terrifying, but also clearly addictive.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of artists say that the Pistols, in a way, gave them permission to, I don't know, to be different, to sound different, to have an opinion, to be difficult.
yeah. I was thinking about this last night when I was cooking the tea. That I suppose Lydon and that ilk, he was probably the best at it. But Weller wrote some great lyrics about being dissatisfied on the first Jam album, but of course we were raised, especially those guys. I mean, my parents were born in 1940, so the first 5 years of their life, Europe's at war, the world's at war. And I suppose that idea of kicking back against your elders, so your parents, your teachers. We had local policemen in where we lived that would just clip you around the ear for walking past them, and So when punk rock came around, it was great for us. It's like we're rebelling against. But then I don't know why I was thinking about this last night, but it's like my parents particularly were only trying to get my brother and I to conform to what they hoped we would do, which is basically do our schoolwork and go into further education, and which would then enable us to have a decent job, hopefully, and pay for our continuing futures, which we had no interest in. But of course, it was important to them because they'd grown up in the war years. There wasn't even a National Health Service, and life was difficult. Life was even more difficult for their parents. So at age 60, I've just decided to let off that generation that were trying to make my generation conform, because all they were trying to do was point out to us that our lives, the opportunities were so much better than they'd had.
Yeah, I think there was I mean, obviously I've got the same generation parents, older. I mean, they're both dead now, but it was, in a sense, for me, it was also, when punk came along, it was sort of like cutting off, looking backwards and being now and in the future, in a sense.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think, isn't it? So when I don't know, I'm buying a Buzzcocks single, and there might be a kid at school that's talking about Pink Floyd, which was, I don't know when Pink Floyd formed, but it's the 60s, isn't it? And then up to the mid 70s, they're still active. I don't know, they still might be today. I have no interest in them still. But it felt like something like Pink Floyd was as old as the Second World War was. It was a period of less than a decade. But for some reason, punk rock came along in full colour and made its point. And I like the phrase, it's 1977 being year zero.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Slade as well. And if I look at the Pistols and try and think, what have they got in common? There's some sort of theatricality to both of them, isn't there?
Definitely. I mean, okay, so the Pistols it's more or less the same lineup. You've got an extra guitar in the fact that Noddy Older played the guitar. All the tracks come in around about the 3 minutes. They're all heading for the chorus. They've all got a guitar solo of sorts. And if you're really lucky on the singles, they've all got an extra bit. All 4 Pistol singles have got an extra bit that didn't appear somewhere else in the song. So it'd be like, no future at the end of God Save the Queen. All 4 singles have got that. So I think they're very closely related. It's just a different wardrobe, and perhaps, just even though in age, they're not that far away from each other, but definitely a different attitude to what they wanted to say in their lyrics. Otherwise, they're virtually the same bands as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I'm going to jump a bit, but Stourbridge produced the Wonder Stuff, Pop Will Eat Itself, Ned's Atomic Dustbin. Why there?
I think it all stems from Clint Mansell and Adam Mole, who guitarist and vocalist from Pop Will Eat Itself. I was lucky enough to be a drummer in the band before Pop Will Eat Itself, and which also featured on guitar Mark Treese, who ended up forming the Wonder Stuff with me. And there was something about, like, if you think of Sting in his role in Quadrophenia's Ace Face, that's kind of what Clint was in Stourbridge. And his best mate was Adam Mole, and they were leather trousers, dyed black hair, crimped. They're very tall, strong presence, and certainly when I met them, you know, I'm 3 or 4 years younger than both of them. It was like I suppose they were my alphas, you know, and so I met them when I was 15. It's like I want to be like these guys. So it didn't take long before I'm dyeing my hair black and buying leather jackets and all that type of stuff. And then the Poppies just had this, Pop Will Eat Itself just had this drive to get out of Stourbridge. It's amusing that the Stourbridge scene is looked upon as such by a few people. I know it's not exactly most rock historians' most important subject, but it was about getting out, even if that was just a sense that way, like, you know, you'd played in Birmingham, you played in Wolverhampton, you played in Dudley. Just even getting to Nottingham or Leicester was like a big deal. And the Pop Will Eat Itself guys were very, very good at doing that, and they're making relationships. So if they met the wedding present by playing with them at the Princess Charlotte, they swapped the phone numbers, and then they would do gig swaps, Halifax, Stourbridge, Birmingham, and they did that with a lot of bands. And then, of course, they were very generous. Clint and Adam would then give me phone numbers when they met, like James Brown or Terry Staunton or David Quantick, or if they got the number of a North London venue, Clint would just say, "Just call this place, get them to put you on the bill." And so it worked, and it happened really quickly. And then Clint again, he saw an early version of Ned's Atomic Dustbin, slightly different lineup, playing in a boozer in Stourbridge. And, you know, his reaction to that was like, "Come on tour with us, lads." And at that point, they were doing, you know, the 1,000 capacity college rooms all over the country. So I'm going to put the blame squarely at Clint Mansell and Adam Mole's feet for what happened and why it happened. It was Clint was ace face of Stourbridge, really.
Was humour then a sort of part of the communication between the bands, and what sort of humour was it?
Crushing piss takes. And yeah, honestly, and it's still the same today. So I'm still in touch with Clint, but he's lived in California, you know, since the late 90s. But I see Adam Mole, guitarist from the Poppies, often, and within a couple of minutes of us getting together, he's calling me a boring bastard, and it was harder to take when I was 15. And I got these 19-year-old guys going, you know, taking the piss out of me. But I think it helped develop my character. We've already discussed I was really shy when I was young. And so to hang around these guys that I really looked up to, I had to, learn the old water off a duck's back when they were piss taking. But it was just piss taking between mates, and it was constant. And when we all get together, it's still the same, which I'm very comfortable with and I quite like.
Did being outside the centre of everything, in essence, give you a sort of scepticism about people who consider themselves important because they're in London or they're in Birmingham or wherever?
Yes. It was beyond scepticism. We were actually... Clint and I were discussing this sometime in the last 10 years. It was quite adversarial, to be honest. So when the British music press would start to lump gay bikers on acid, say from Leicester or Crazy Ed, in with Pop Will Eat Itself, they'd be like, "Who are these guys? This has nothing to do with us." You know, even though they'd hung out with them at the Clarendon, you know, doing on one of those 5-band bills at the Clarendon, they'd all completely got on with each other, and then you just started dissing each other, and it even came to the point where Pop Will Eat Itself and us would be disrespecting each other in the NME, you know, firing blows at one another, and I think, yeah, it was more than skeptical; it was adversarial, and I think any London band fuck do they think they are? You know, we were very much like that. But that's any so. I suppose we may have missed out on some opportunities by being dicks like that, as I would if I was to hear our conversations now. But at the same time, maybe it was self-preservation.
I mean, you went from drummer with the initial band with Clint, and then when the Wonder Stuff formed and Clint went off on his own as well, when that split happened, you became, singer, guitarist, and you talked about the character that came out of you and mentioned that it possibly was from you being very shy when you were young, but also doesn't being the frontman give you permission to be? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like if you're at the front, you can be somebody you're not in normal life.
Yeah, it absolutely does, and even more pathetic than that is, when she got given a microphone and you can tell fucking 1,700 people to go fuck themselves. And once I tried that out, it felt pretty good. So I kept doing it. And then also, I recently met up with Mark Shaw from Then Jericho. And we gigged together in '87. So we supported Then Jericho. And we haven't seen each other since. So I met him last year, and he said, "I remember me and my guitarist from Then Jericho. We were watching your support set, and he said, my guitarist turned to me and said, either that singer's really hard or he can run really fast, because of the way I was talking to their audience, being antagonistic, abusive." And I said to Mark, "Well, neither are true. I can't run fast and I'm not hard." But I suppose I was buoyed somewhat by the fact that Malk Treese, our guitarist and our original bass player, Rob the Bass Thing Jones, were, if required, hard as nails.
But when you like that, when when you can be so forward and sort of aggressive on stage, it's almost like when you attack, it stops somebody else attacking you back, doesn't it?
Yeah, self-preservation again, because that definitely wasn't me. I mean, what the things that would come out of my mouth, I don't know where I got it from. I remember walking on stage. We'd had a huge argument in rehearsal. I think we were supporting Pop Will Eat Itself at like a 1,300 capacity, sold out venue in Birmingham. And I'd said we should only do 20 minutes. But the slot we were given was half an hour. And I said, no. Let's just do 20 minutes. Let's just get in, kill, get off. Leave them wanting more. And the whole band disagreed with me. And so it was left to me just going at the last moment in rehearsal, well, I'm doing 20 minutes. Do what the fuck you like when I'm gone. So, okay, we'll just do 20s. And I remember walking on stage, and the audience was big cheer for us. We were doing okay locally, We'd got a couple of independent singles out. The local radio was playing us. And I remember this big cheer, and I said, "Oh, fuck off. I'm sick of this like you." And then blasted into the first song. Like, fuck was I thinking? But then I've met so many people over the years that it's like, "Oh, Miles, you won't remember me, but I walked past you at Reading Festival once and said, 'All right, Milo, how you going?' You just told me to fuck off." I was so chuffed. It's like a badge of honor being a Wonder Stuff fan and having me actually giving you your own personal, go fuck yourself.
I love that. Someone calls you a or something and you, yeah, fantastic.
Honestly, the amount of times people have said that to me, and all I say now is like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry."
I want to talk about your lyrics, because sometimes they sound like someone speaking. Sometimes they're hostile. Sometimes they're funny. They're vulnerable. They've got so many things in the same breath. And I just wondered where your lyrical influences came from.
Right. Okay. Well, I do have a political mind. But I choose to keep that out of my lyrics in an obvious sense. Although "It's Your Money I'm After, Baby" and give me more. There's another money related one. They are all sort of third person. I'm just being a sort of Thatcherite jerk off because Thatcher was still in power at the time. And, that sort of loads of money type of that was the character that was singing those. But that's all first album stuff, and it was all I knew how to do was to sort of imitate, and a new rhythm, a new rhyme, and I looked up very much to Morrissey as a lyricist. Particularly the Smiths period Morrissey lyrics I just loved, and I loved something like, I've come to wish you an unhappy birthday. To me is fucking hysterical. But you don't spend your time laughing through the song because the song's a serious piece of music. It's great. I don't know. I suppose around the Eight-Legged, I was trying to pull that off. Then we go on tour, life begins, we're touring the world, and we've got to write the second album. And that's really where I start to write about myself. Of course, I'm a stupid young man. I'm doing what stupid young men do on tour, drinking too much, hooking up with a couple of different girls, and when I had no right to be doing that. And then so those experiences sort of become the subject matter of the songs on Hop. I suppose I'm writing, I suppose ever since Hook, really, I'm just writing about what goes on with me. Occasionally I'll try and squeeze a gag in there. But I do enjoy writing lyrics, and I've, in the last year or so, I've just written a whole album of lyrics for my other band, Vent 414, and I really, really enjoyed. I don't pore over them. I like to get an entire song written in 10 minutes because I've got a very short attention span. But yeah.
But I saw that you listened to, or you liked very much when you were young, people like Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, presumably Leonard Cohen, I would think would come into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dylan was sort of a master of the absurd, and there was some viciousness, but funny stuff in what he did. And that anger is quite powerful when it's expressed softly instead of like being, like showing the anger. It's just in there somewhere. So,
I think
like you really learned from them.
Definitely. And I think I read recently, it's either in Sinead O'Connor's memoir, that she said that Bob Dylan's Idiot Wind gave her permission to be angry. I just fucking loved that. I loved that. And yes, of course, we'd had Weller, Strummer, and Lydon with the punk rock, but then to go back, because I got into those artists that you mentioned, like Joni Mitchell and Dylan and Cohen, later on when I was in my mid-20s, I guess. And to hear that, Johnny Rotten didn't invent, having a good old shout about something. It goes way before. And I love that line of Sinead's, and I think it's probably true of me. Like idiot. I mean, I shouldn't really say this, but there's a line in Who Wants to Be the Disco King by the Wonder Stuff, which is just wholesale repeated at the end of the song. It's taken from Idiot Wind. It had such an impact on me.
Now stick with me, because the end of this interview is absolutely hysterical. It's brilliant. Anyhow, let's get back to Miles Hunt. Why am I wasting your time? But that absurdity that I mentioned, like the size of a cow, is so absurd, and that that sort of connects it. And if you look at Joni Mitchell, it's her lyrics are quite observant, but then sometimes that observation turns back on her, which is what you do very well.
Okay. So something where something from Joni Mitchell that I always liked and it's a ridiculously obvious song to pick, but so Big Yellow Taxi, when she laughs, the bit near the end where she's taking it up into a falsetto, there's a subject, the subject matter is very serious of Big Yellow Taxi, but she's having a great deal of fun, and yes, the absurdity and her laughing. Size of a Cow, I think if you just give it a read through without knowing what it sounds like, it is me essentially trying to figure out whether I'm alcoholic yet. Is essentially what the song's about. I knew I was miserable most of the time. I knew I was drinking every day. And yeah, it's a question to myself: is this my descent into alcoholism, and should I do something about it? Which I didn't. And but then from around the same time, you got like Welcome to the Cheap Seats, and I haven't a fucking clue what that's about. And I love that. So that would be like we're jamming around a few chords and a riff, and I've just got a notebook. I better write something down. So I'm like, oh, okay, quite like, keep playing that bit for me. Blah, 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 blah. And it's, it's got, and I'd run the lawnmower over his thighs. And it's like, I'm in North London. There isn't a blade of grass in sight. I'm in a windowless rock and roll rehearsal room. Where the fucking hell did running somebody over with a lawnmower come? Other than it just struck me as an amusing image and slightly distasteful. But yeah, the best lyrics that I feel I've written are ones that I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know where this is coming from, and they go down very, very quickly. And yeah, I like that.
I mean, Welcome to the Cheap Seats, from my perspective, was always sort of laughing at the people that aren't in the cheap seats.
I'm not going to suggest for a second, Steve, that I am a pioneer of the trans generation. But you've got like in another world he could wear a dress, and that all I'm trying to say is in what I think is a slightly more illustrative way of just saying, well, my life could be so much different to this, but again, it would have just hit the page as quick as it came into my head without me trying to think, what's this song about? It's coming. Unfortunately, it didn't always happen like that. Sometimes I would write, is it in Little Green? A track from a Joni Mitchell track where she says, there's a line about a ruby in a black man's ear. She shone like a ruby in a black man's ear. And then a little bit later on, she says something about a horse. And so on my notebook page, because I'm just on a tour bus, like writing down words and phrases while I'm listening. And so I got Ruby Horse. And then when we were in rehearsal a few weeks later, writing songs for 8-Legged Groove Machine, I'm like, Ruby Horse, that could be the name of a character. Let's write a little story about a girl called Ruby Horse. And so coincidences like that would be nice. Sadly, I don't really keep a diary or a notebook with me anymore. Yeah, I've scored them from a lot of places, and I still think probably one of my favorite lyricists, as well as Morrissey, is another Manchester master, would be Howard Devoto from Magazine. I am just enthralled to this day of all of Howard's lyrics.
What about Ray Davies? Because that was very observational, very traditional, sort of class, had all the class aspiration in it.
Yeah, I've had Ray Davies put to me quite a few times. A lot of journalists have said, you clearly are a huge Kinks fan. I just know the songs they play on the radio. I've never looked into it. I suppose it's because it's that, like what I said about somebody like Pink Floyd, that the Kinks is in black and white to me. Just simply because it's from the 60s. So as a pop band, it never really featured with me. I should do something about it before I expire, because I hear they're very good.
Well, there's a lot of social realism in their songs, which is it's really of the time, and also being a person who lived through the Thatcher era, then it sort of fits. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. When do you feel that, you mentioned it a bit, but just wonder when you started to feel very comfortable in your role as a songwriter?
And I probably about in the last 18 months. I just hit a real sort of golden thread recently that I realized that sitting in front of a computer, programming drums, and then putting chords together over those drums, and then looking for a melody, like basically writing on my own, it's not been a waste of time, but it's not me at my best. The results of efforts like that don't provide me with my best work. My best work is done in a room with other musicians, hopefully a drum kit, where it's loud, And so where I decided to pitch my voice as a young singer was purely to be heard on a crappy monitor system in a cheap rehearsal room. Are you singing up here? Because I got to hear me, I got to try and be heard over all those cymbals. And when I sit here at a computer, which I've done for 25 years and more, I forget all that. And I was only reminded when we did this recent Vent 4 and 4 record that, which I had no interest in making. It was the producer said, I want to make a record with you and the two guys from Vent. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested. I'm not writing any more songs ever. And he's like, you're a miserable bastard. And I'm like, you're not the first person to say it. I'm not going to sit at home and write songs to then go to fucking studio. I don't care anymore. So he said, just come into the studio, the three of you. Nobody prepare anything. Nobody write anything and see what happens. And in the first day, we came up with 7 of the frameworks that are now songs finished on the album. And I hadn't done that in such a long time, be in a room with other musicians and singing above the surrounding noise, and something about bringing those rough recordings home and hearing me back up here made me write lyrics. I'm like, this guy, I'm listening to myself, I'm like, this guy sounds like he really fucking cares about something. So now I've got to put the words into his mouth. And so if that I think I'm best served as a songwriter when that is the situation. And it's just, I'm slightly regretful that it's taken me so long to find that is a truism.
So when you're creating something, is it important for you to actually then make the people around you laugh initially because of the absurdity, the words that sometimes, the phrases that you use are very entertaining, obviously. And no, but I think that I just wonder whether you need to hear that it works in that sense, not just that the song works. So you need to hear that the lyrics have hit in.
I probably do, yeah. I certainly love it if a member of the band goes, "Oh, I love that line. That's such a great line." That makes me happier than being told that that's a nice set of chords you brought in. And but in terms of reactions in a rehearsal room or a studio, the first place I like to get us all to is laughing. I do. We're not like sit closely together and go, could you just show me that and see if I can find the harmony? We're not those people. When I watch, I think last year there was another U2 documentary, and for reasons I can't explain because I can't stand them, I watched about 10 minutes of it, and I just saw, Bono in his usual pretentious, patronizing way that he speaks to people. And imagine a room that the Wonder Stuff are in. It's the complete antithesis to that. We like humor. We grew up on Slade. And even though there's dark moments in Slade in Flame, their movie, there's a hell of a lot of laughs. And it is humor is important to us. Yeah.
When did you realize that the Wonder Stuff were successful?
Perhaps in 1994 when I said I was leaving, and my manager, the head of the record company, my brother, my dad, all sat me down and said, "Are you sure? You're really onto a good thing here, and you're at the top of your commercial game. The work isn't suffering yet. You don't sound, burned out or tired." And I'll probably say, he goes, "Well, I'm just going to do what Weller did." And so I was probably taking misguided influence from Paul splitting up the Jam when, what was he, fucking 23 or 24? I mean, I was only 28 when we split the Wonder Stuff up. So probably then was like, shit. Sounds, but the reason I just kept pushing forward, I was arrogant and like, no, I've made this decision, and even though I'm shooting myself in the foot by doing so, I'm having my own fucking way. But what kept me on that course of like, no, I've got to get out of here. I'm not enjoying it. Whereas no single member of the band came forward and said, "Are you sure?" No, but no one said, "What is it that's pissing you off? What could we do about it?" No one. So they didn't ask, and it was never debated. I just said, I'm off. Yeah, weird.
I mean, you did tell a story about bumping into a tout who was selling like a £3 ticket for 50 quid.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I'd come up on the Central Line, got off at Tottenham Court Road with a load of Wonder Stuff. And it was like everyone on that carriage was wearing a Wonder Stuff t-shirt. Beanie pulled down, hair in a ponytail. And so nobody recognized me. And I'm like, just sort of chuckling to myself, this is really nice. They all seem really excited. I hope we're good. And yeah, it came out of the tube. And geezer just comes straight up to me. You want to see Wonder Stuff, mate? You want to see Wonder Stuff? And I was like, how much? And he says 50 quid. I'm like, fuck off. And I went in, flashed my pass, went in the back door. It's a dressing room, said to the band, they're selling tickets out there for 50 quid to see us. And I think it was like maybe £2.50. I don't think it had broken a fiver. Maybe you'd remember, I don't know, like 1988, the Astoria, was it 5-6 quid? Mental.
When you're famous, you know, and the Wonder Stuff reaching that, you know, pinnacle and that success, there's all this machinery around you, like the record companies, people like me, you know, journalists, managers, backstage people, and you're getting treated differently. How much did humor protect you from all that bullshit, and what did you do to protect yourself?
Right. I think, yeah, a couple of journalists might have felt the sharp edge of my tongue, but it would be, you know, I would do that if I thought, honestly, you've done no fucking research. Like, if the first two questions are, anyone could have got it out of the one sheet biog. You know, my favorite one was to be asked that would just put me like in a foul mood and almost make me leave was, so where did you get the name? Like, if I got asked that, eventually I learned to just go, next. Yeah, let's move on from there. Because you've clearly done nothing in preparation for this, and I've bothered to be here. With the record company, and it's funny, I met a PR, Jane Wilkes, did a festival out in Ireland last weekend, and Jane was working with Feeder. She now works with Alan McGee, and she's, you know, spent a good year or two working on the Wonder Stuff when we were at Polydor years ago, and I haven't seen her since. So that's, you know, it's 30 years or more. And it was just great to see her. And I remember we got in touch a few days later, and I was writing her an email, and I just was, I can only imagine I made your life a nightmare when we were working together. And it was so nice of you to come and find us at the festival, and it was certainly lovely to see you. Please let me apologise for whatever my behaviour was at the time. And she was great. She said, no, I only have good memories of working with you. So, but I think I generally...
Miles, she was lying.
She's looking for another job.
It's a record company, you know.
Brilliant. But yeah, I didn't. We certainly didn't really know what we were doing. I certainly would have perhaps appreciated things, particularly when we went to America. We did eventually get a second manager that worked with our English manager, an American manager, Beverly Hills born and bred, that was going to help steer us through the confusion of what promotion in America was. And he did his best, but we didn't listen. But I'm glad to say me and him are still friends. Yeah, humour would have helped. Humour would have helped it all, really. Sometimes I struggle to find my funny bone. But yeah, humour would have helped. Just take the piss out of people. And there's guys that's like, you know, there'd be like a local radio promoter in Chicago. No, he would just do the Chicago metro area, and we'd go boozing with him. And he'd sort of obviously met a few other bands that had come through. It always seems like Hot House Flowers had been through like the week before, and then we were always given the offer. And this guy's called Thomas Westfall was the guy in Chicago, and there was Sean Renee in Los Angeles, and we'd stay at their houses. I mean, the label they've got hotels for us, but one hotel after another is just soulless, and that didn't go down very well with us. So now these are people that are lifelong friends, aren't they? I'm 60, so and we just got on because you do the job, you do the radio interview, you do the journalist interview, then you go to a bar, then you go back to their house, hit some more bourbon, and then you're friends for life, and that made the job easier, and all of it would have been just ripping the piss out of each other, yeah.
You mentioned Clint Mansell at the beginning and how important he was to you, and that you have occasional contact. He lives in LA, I think you said. But was Mission Drive about your relationship at that point?
It was about an argument. Clint and I have been really good over the 40 odd years that we've known each other at falling out. So there'll be there could be a 3 or 4 year period where we don't speak to each other, and then you'll be at the same event, and it'll be, hello boy, how you doing? And it all is forgotten. Yes, Mission Drive was about an argument that Clint and I had, which we then didn't talk to each other for a couple of years. And then there's an answer to Mission Drive. It was tucked away on a B-side on the next album. It's called Burger Standing. And it's my apology for writing Mission Drive, or for saying the things that I said in Mission Drive.
Did it work?
I played it to him. I actually played him an unmixed version of it in the studio, and he was like, "Nice one, bro. Thanks." Yeah. But we're going to see each other later this month, which would be lovely because I haven't seen him for a year or two. So
there's always been humour in the Wonder stuff, and I have this sort of theory because Dizzy encouraged people to think the Wonder stuff was just humour. Was that the mistake, as it were?
It's funny, actually. It's not just Dizzy. Size of a Cow, the A&R guy at Polydor, Graham Carpenter, he tried to talk me out of wanting to release it as a single, because he said, I said, are you kidding? We've written and recorded a stone cold hit. And he just said, it will change the trajectory of the band. You will pick up an entirely different fan base. And then we made the costume sort of Mr. Ben dressing up silly video that grandmas and grandchildren could enjoy together. And it had certainly taken us out of the Astoria, Brixton Academy, scruffy, beery kind of environments, which was where we'd been, I suppose. I suppose once you have a pop hit like The Size of a Cow, then your credibility is in question, I suppose. But I argued back. I think I'm right in saying Shiny Happy People by REM was just a ridiculously wonderful piece of pop when they hooked up with the B-52s. I'm like, but there's me assuming that we're as cool as REM before we do Size of a Cow, which is, of course, I would never dare to assume now. And then, of course, we meet Vic Reeves, and he asks us if we'd be his backing band on Dizzy. Clearly, it was going to be a humorous thing to do. He was Britain's top light entertainer at the time, and yes. Well, I suppose the legacy is that if you go into a BBC radio computer, there's only Dizzy and there's only The Size of a Cow in there. So if we do, I mean, we probably still do get a couple of plays every fortnight in the UK, but it's only those tracks. So yes, I think a lot of people that might go, if I say, did you ever listen to the Wonder Stuff's Hop? Those are clowns that did the Vic Reeves single. It probably did a little bit of harm, but on balance, Jim Moyer, aka Vic Reeves, is still one of my best friends, and that's 36 years. Him and I have known each other now. We talk every few months. I was with him last weekend, his wife and his kids, and it's, to me, fuck the music business. This is one of the sweetest, kindest, most generous, obviously very funny men I've ever met, and to have a 36-year friendship come out of that single, I'll take that over fucking rock and roll credibility every day.
With Vent 414, you've been on tour, haven't you? And now we're in the sort of festival season, and then there's going to be this Wonder Stuff 40-year
Mhm.
tour.
Yeah.
When you're, well, first of all, maybe I should talk about Vimp 414 and what that gives you that the Wonder Stuff doesn't.
It's really driven by the Morgan Nichols, the bass player, and Pete Howard. But then this now sounds sort of a convoluted thing to say because Pete Howard is also the drummer in the Wonder Stuff these days. So it's basically stripping away all of the bells and whistles off the Wonder Stuff and replacing all of that. So 2 guitars, keyboards, violins, backing vocals, strip all of that away and replace it with a bass player. And only Morgan Nichols' style of playing bass. He's from the Who family. So he grew up around Entwistle and Townsend and Daltrey. And so I think he was even sort of early tuition from John Entwistle. So he plays bass in a way that I have never, ever seen anyone play bass. So it's counter melodies. There's an aggression to it. It locks in with the drummer. It's bizarre. It's like listening to 2 or 3 bass players play, or 2 or 3 guitarists playing at once. He locks in completely brilliantly with Pete Howard, who's been my favourite drummer since the very first time I heard him. And bizarrely, Martin Gilks, the original Wonder Stuff drummer, it was him that told me to go and see Pete's then band, Eat, that were on the same label as us. And because he said, Milo, Gilks, he said to me, you got to come and see this band's fucking greatest drummer you've ever seen. So to have Pete playing in the Wonder Stuff, I know Martin would like that. You know, Martin passed away in 2006. So then is me, Pete, Morgan, and very little else. I mean, that's all it is. There's a couple of overdubs on the new album. First album we did with Steve Albini, and he wouldn't allow overdubs as a producer or recording engineer. And I suppose there are a couple of gags in the lyrics, but I think you'd really have to be paying attention to catch my sense of humor and vent. It sounds a lot more aggressive than anything the Wonder Stuff's ever done. But for me, it's just a vehicle to hear Pete and Morgan's play together. As a guitarist, I try to stay out of the way. Just to do as little as possible with the electric guitar, just so everyone can hear what those 2 guys are doing. And then I try to find melodies to ride over the top, but not. I think I don't ever want the vocal to be the point of a Vent 414 piece of music. Everyone should be listening to the drummer and bass player. So maybe there's, I don't know, maybe there's something sort of jazz like about Vent, and that I don't write songs. I don't take songs in to Vent. We jam, and then we arrange out a jam. So,
I mean, when you're on tour with the Wonder Stuff, some of your audience have spent their whole adult life with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they are remembering their lives by hearing those songs and what happened to them. And you're relating sometimes stories on stage. What connection is there between what you're relating and what they're actually experience themselves? Do they tell you?
Yeah, I've got a really lovely relationship with the audiences. I mean, I've sat at 2 deathbeds of 2 fans, and you know, in their final moments, their family have messaged me and gone, "Could you find it within your heart to come?" And it was people that I had previously met, but we weren't in touch. And then they're in Macmillan Cancer Wards, and one of them, lovely Sammy Jacob, not Sammy Jacob, lovely Sammy from Derbyshire. His mom asked me to go, and the nurse was great. It was a great gay guy going, "Oh, were you the rock star, are you?" And I'm like, "All right, mate, just coming in to say goodbye to my friend." And Sammy was very poorly, and when I left, the nurse said, "Why didn't you bring a guitar?" And so I thought, well, that's a nice idea, but it looked like hours. Oh, Sammy. So I went back to Sam's mum and I said, "Shall I come back tomorrow with a guitar?" And she was like, "Yeah." And so I knew him since he was 16. I was working at MTV when I first met Sammy, and he wrote to me an actual letter that arrived on my desk at MTV. Yeah. I do have a good relationship, and I think that's social media. But you know, what you just said about our music's been with them all their lives now. And I suppose if you did get into the one stuff when you were 14 or 15, and it's 40 years later, you're in your mid-50s, that pretty much that's your adult life, isn't it? And I now see it as well, that's a privilege, isn't it?
It is a privilege, but also it's an experience, particularly with this young guy. It's an experience that must have changed you as well.
Yeah, it has. It has. I never wanted to be involved in anybody's lives. You know, I mean, I live on my own in the middle of fucking nowhere, and seemingly my job, as I laughably call it, has made this connection with people, not just all over the UK, but all over the world. And yeah, I'm now at that age because, and those experiences have taught me then. All of that's made me a better person. I don't want to be the mouthy little prick that came out the gates when he was 20 years old. I don't want to be that guy.
It's brilliant to talk to you, Miles. I remember that mouthy little prick, and I'm going to end with one last question. Why you named the Wonder Stuff? Come on, call me it. Call me it. Call me it. What am I? What am I?
You lazy fuck off.
Brilliant, Miles. See you again.
Thank you, Steve. Cheers, man. Thank you.
Bye. Up there is an interview I recommend. Down there is where you can find all the podcast interviews. And here is where you can connect.